You are listening to the Casting Shadows podcast, and this is a short series on preparing to run Alien, the RPG from Free League. The series will focus on preparation for horror and preparation for improvisation inside the context of the Colonial Marines campaign mode. If that sounds appealing, I hope you'll consider listening. And if you are interested in the game yourself, you have run it or you will run it, I hope you'll consider interacting with me here or in the other ways that is possible to get a hold of me. All right, let's get into it. Character creation in a game like Free League's Alien role-playing game, well, it brings up a number of questions which I find interesting, and I hope my sharing of them in this episode will be interesting for you, the listener. This episode is going to look at 3 of those questions, and I've cast them in my own particular way. First question, how will we feed the alien? Second, who will we feed to the alien? And third, when will we feed the alien? The order of these questions is important, and these are the first among the questions that I feel must be answered when setting up a game of Alien. Although on the surface, and with this funny phrasing I'm using to make this episode fun for myself, the questions might seem somewhat trivial, but I feel they are essential. Single meal or lunch plan? The way the game is set up is to offer the players 2 modes of play: cinematic play and campaign play. Cinematic is an adjective that I feel gets a lot of abuse in RPG circles, but here it is used with refreshing accuracy. Cinematic play is for the one-shot, if time allows. It allows for the play of a set of characters with an expectation of recreating the feel and events that might occur in a movie in the Alien franchise. It is built around the basic premise of a group of people in mainly civilian occupations finding themselves in disorienting and deadly circumstances where the pressure slowly increases to intolerable levels. Death and unpleasant ways to arrive at death are a feature, not a bug, of this mode of play. Campaign is an adjective with a history of vague usage which has blurred the lines of meaning, perhaps beyond recovery at this point. Campaign play in the Alien RPG seems to be geared toward a run of sessions of perhaps 10 or 12 in number where the players, through one or more characters, operate in the Alien universe. The specific mechanisms which help to create the pending explosions of the cinematic mode are removed or reduced in order to provide a slower boil and to enable the characters to develop with more influence from their environment and the events of play. In both modes, looking at the title of the game and the main dice rolling mechanism, we're reminded that the framework for play is one of fear. It might be framed as a horror game where the fear is strong and has ties to the physical in obvious ways, such as fear of death or dismemberment, or fear of encountering the remains of those who have died and or been dismembered. It might be framed a little off that center with a tone where there's time to contemplate more than just the peril to oneself, but the import of the existence of the threat, such as the implications of the alien making its way to a fully populated world. This adds a certain burden to the characters to face the horror rather than just escape or survive it. It might differently be framed as a military action game, with strong overtones of fear from uncertainty, with orders and duty pushing at characters to overcome the threat, and common sense and the instinct for self-preservation pushing at them in the other, the soldiers being in over their heads. Although character creation asks you to look at building space truckers, colonial marines, or colonists, Alien is not a game of space truckers hauling cargo in space. It's not a game of colonial marines patrolling the colonies. It's not a game of colonists taming new worlds. It is a game where horror strikes in those areas and among those types of people. The question we must answer is, how much of that branded horror of Alien, or of a spoiler-free variant of it of our own design, do we want? A one-shot? Or a series of linked sessions? It matters because it is informed by how much scary fun we can stand, and it informs how our character creation will actually work. What's on the menu? In cinematic play, the GM is expected to take on the role of character design in order to produce a specific set of influences on the starting situation that they have prepared for tonight's one-shot. In campaign play, the group is expected to collaborate on the occupation of their characters, pulling from a list, and this in turn will influence the basic situations of play, understanding that things are going to evolve into worse and worse situations through the sessions. From the three basic occupational setups, in our group, ours will be the Colonial Marines, and we are going for campaign play. According to the rules of the game, we can create characters using the core book, or we can alter that process a little bit by using the character creation rules found in the Colonial Marines Operations Manual. This still gives us characters which on paper are largely the same, but the quick point-buy choices provided have been filtered through 12 MOSs, Military Operational Specialties, and that section gives light guidance on rank and playing rank. The players are advised to work openly as they individually create their characters. In cases of random tables being consulted, players are also advised to re-roll in case of duplicate results. So sharing what the characters are as they develop is important. Now, I find this to be good advice in order to produce a flavorful variety of experience and background for the squad, and that I'll explain in a minute. There aren't many items to be generated in these random rolls, but they are of a nature that will allow them to be seen again in future campaigns without them feeling the same. They're good prompts. At the end of the process, following these rules, character creation will produce Marines that feel like veterans of harsh service rather than fresh recruits. And they will also have differing experiences, not just in terms of their particular specialties, but also because of a strong implication that though they are a squad now, they've been put together from the remains of other squads. This sets us out with a specific taste of what duty in the USMC might be like in terms of active duty types, length of service, and life expectancy. Unlike cinematic play, where these characters and their rivalries and intentionally conflicting agendas will complete a stage, set for a fast burn into nightmare, panic, and probable death, the campaign preparation can now begin. We know who will eventually meet the alien at the table. We have no idea who is going to eat. When is dinner? The core rules give a suggestion that a campaign is perhaps even dozens of sessions, as though that were a lot. For those of us who grew up with the widespread but perhaps very broad and inaccurate definition of campaign as being unending unless ended, that can seem like a very short run of sessions. In some games, a dozen sessions is barely enough to have tried most of the mechanics even once, and in others, even several dozen sessions might be nowhere near enough to have really learned the nuances of how and when to roll, at least for your particular group. Looking at the mechanisms of play in this game, however, there's not much to them in terms of challenge for understanding. The larger hurdle by far is the nuance of when and how often to roll, and, when rolling, what is an appropriate circumstance for the mechanic of pushing that roll. This matters because pushing is the doorway through which stress and all of its mechanical implications for the character's actions and the possibility for panic can enter play. It must enter play, or the promised horror of the setting will not be reinforced by the system. But more than that, it must enter play, or the characters will simply fail most of the important things that they attempt. None of us wants to play an incompetent Marine, and all of us are ready for a horror scenario as competent Marines in dire situations. So, for us, that means at some point things must get difficult and then get worse. This informs the type of choices made about opposition, locations, the environment inside those locations, and so on. In addition to the relative ease of the system, there's not much room for development other than character personality and relationship development. Career changes, skill improvement, and so on are possible and simple, but as written, it seems there will only be a minor change after every mission, or perhaps two, if circumstances of play allow. Given the thematic goals of the game, and that horror is at its core, not exploring an exciting life in an off-world colony. This is another sign that the duration of any campaign is likely to be short enough, or should be made short enough, that this simple and limited improvement system will add to the experience rather than detract from it. So, with all of this in mind, it seems that dinner will be a relatively short affair of around 10 sessions, served up in a few stepped stages, with some early variety of dangers that raise the stakes until the sizzling main course of inflammable screaming death arrives to put paid to hunger forever. Before I close out this episode, earlier in the episode, I played a short little snippet from a fantastic little early comedy rock song from long, long ago called Dinner at Drax. Would that be appropriate in your Alien game? Would playing that in the background somehow as a piece of Earth culture work on any level for you and your players? Only you and they can know that. Only you and they can know if that would assist with the tone and the atmosphere, or if it would detract from it. This is one of those cases where preference and bias directly impact play and make it personal, make it ours, and make the Alien universe our Alien universe, not someone else's. You've been listening to the Casting Shadows blog with the second installment in a short series on Alien, the role-playing game, from the perspective of preparation for horror, and preparation for improvisation. I hope you enjoyed it and that you might return for another episode. Until then, take care.